They called me cold when I finally said no. No to my ex, my cousin, even my father. But after a lifetime of saving everyone else, I realized the only one who needed saving was me. They say the worst part of drowning is right before you stop fighting. But I remember every second I spent gasping for financial air. Debt collectors were not just voices on the phone. They became my alarm clock. Every morning, same time, different threat. Some days I unplugged the phone just to eat in peace. Other days, I let it ring, like I deserved the punishment. Back then, I was 31, single, and neck deep in nearly 30 grand of debt. Nothing glamorous, no wild Vegas trips, no sports cars. Just stupid decisions piled on top of bad luck. Medical bills I ignored. A truck I could not afford but refused to give up. Fast food dinners. Credit cards maxed out on things I do not even remember now. Probably some kitchen gadget I thought would change my life. It didn't. There was a night I still think about. I was crouched in the dark behind my own couch, holding my breath while someone pounded on the door. I knew it was the repo guy. They had already taken the truck. I figured maybe now they wanted the TV or the cheap dining set I got from Craigslist. I did not move until the knocking stopped. My heart beat so loud I thought it might echo off the drywall. That night, I made myself a promise. I was never going to end up there again. Not ever. Not behind a couch. Not hiding from bills. Not lying to myself. It did not come from some motivational quote or flashy moment. It came from shame. The kind that sticks to your bones. The kind you carry into every room, no matter how many lights you turn on. People love stories with turning points. But mine did not feel like one. It felt like quitting. Quitting the excuses, the fake confidence, the pretending that everything was fine when it obviously wasn't. That night, I sat in the kitchen with an old notebook and wrote down every single dollar I owed. Took me almost 2 hours. By the end, my hand was shaking and my stomach was turning. But I looked at that number, just stared at it, and whispered, never again. That was the first time I ever talked to myself like I mattered. But knowing what you want and getting there, two different things. I had no guide, no savings, no help. Just the kind of stubbornness you develop when you have been stepped on enough times to learn how to stand up. The next morning, I got up early, skipped breakfast, and canceled the gym membership I never used. I called the credit card companies, one by one, and listened to them talk to me like I was nothing. I took it, swallowed my pride, made a plan, and stuck to it like my life depended on it, because it did. Nobody clapped. Nobody posted about it. Nobody said I was brave. But that was the day I started crawling. I thought the hard part was over. But then came the real challenge, staying disciplined while everyone around me kept spinning like nothing could touch them. When you decide to fix your life, nobody throws you a party. They just keep living the same way, while you start saying no to everything that used to make you feel normal. That was the hardest part at first, the silence. I used to meet up with the guys every Friday for beers, wings, and trash talk. Even when I was broke, I went. Pretended everything was good. Tossed a 20 on the table and hoped nobody noticed the card I used kept declining. But after that night behind the couch, I stopped going. I told them I was working late. Truth was, I was home, eating ramen and watching the same 3 DVDs over and over. No Netflix. No cable. I cut it all. If it cost money, it was gone. I started tracking every penny in this old notebook. A beat-up spiral one with coffee stains on the cover. Rent, groceries, gas. Every dollar had to report for duty. If I spent even $5 on something dumb, I wrote it down. That kind of honesty hurts at first, like holding a mirror to your worst habits. I switched from brand-name cereal to whatever was on sale. Sold my couch on Craigslist and used a camp chair in the living room. I stopped driving unless I had to. Walked to work. Caught rides when I could. The bus became my therapist. I sat there with earbuds in, listening to podcasts about budgeting, credit repair, discipline. Things I used to think were for nerds or control freaks. Turns out, they were right. My credit score was shot, but I still pulled a copy. Seeing it in writing was like being handed a report card covered in red ink. But instead of giving up, I started paying off the smallest debt first. They call it the snowball method. You knock out one, and the momentum pushes you into the next. One by one, I watched those balances drop. It took 6 months to pay off my first credit card. I celebrated with a frozen pizza and a can of store-brand soda. Everywhere around me, people were living loud. New phones, weekend getaways, tattoos, and Air Jordans. My cousin bought a lifted truck with tires taller than her kid. She posted a picture with the caption, "Work hard, play harder." I just looked at it and shook my head, because I was working harder than anyone I knew. But there was no play. There was only grinding, and watching everyone else live like the bill would never come due. But I knew better. Still, sometimes, that voice crept in. You are missing out. You are wasting your life. And I would sit there, staring at my notebook, wondering if they were right. Until one night, I checked my bank account and saw something I had not seen in years. A positive balance, one that did not vanish the second the rent hit. It was only $78, but it felt like a fortune. And right as things started looking up, someone from my past came knocking, holding a smile and a reason I should start spending again. It was a Tuesday night, middle of winter. I had just finished another long shift and was heating up some leftovers when I heard a knock at the door. Not a light one, either. It was the kind of knock that said someone was real sure of themselves. I opened the door, and there she was, Tasha. We had not spoken in almost 2 years. Not since she left town with a guy who sold supplements out of his trunk and promised her they would live rich before 30. She looked exactly the same. Glossy hair, fake lashes, and that same flirty smirk that used to undo me back in the day. Only this time, she had on a coat that looked a little too thin for the weather, and her eyes, they looked tired. "Hey, stranger," she said, brushing past me like she still had a key. "This place is still freezing." I stood there, confused. I had not seen her name pop up in months. Not a call. Not even a passive-aggressive comment on social media. And now she was just in my living room, looking around like she was home again. "I was in the area," she said, kicking off her boots. "Figured I'd check on you." But I could tell that was not it. People do not show up just to check in when they left without a word. She sat down on the camp chair, the only one I had, and let out a slow sigh. That is when she started talking. Said things had not worked out with supplement guy. Said he owed money to some people. Said they were between places, and she was tired of sleeping in her car. Then she dropped it. "You always knew how to hustle. I could use that kind of focus right now." I stared at her, unsure what to even say. 2 years ago, she would have laughed at the life I was living now. She used to tease me about cutting coupons and watching budgeting videos. She once told me, "Life is short, swipe the card." Now here she was, asking if she could crash for a few nights. Said she would pitch in for groceries and help with stuff. I asked what stuff. She just smiled and said, "You know, life." And a small part of me, the old me, wanted to say yes. Because she was familiar. Because it was cold. Because loneliness is a powerful liar, and it makes even the worst ideas sound warm and reasonable. But I had worked too hard to let chaos back in. I told her no. She laughed at first. Thought I was joking. But when she saw I was serious, that smirk cracked just a little. "Wow," she said, standing up. "You used to be fun." I did not say anything. I just opened the door. She left without another word. But right before she stepped off the porch, she looked back and said something that stuck with me. "Whatever. Keep playing it safe. Let me know how boring works out for you." And just like that, she was gone. What I did not know then was that she was not the only one watching, and someone else had already decided I owed them, too. 3 days after Tasha showed up, I got a text from my cousin Jay. Just 5 words. "Hey man, you got a minute?" Jay and I grew up close. We used to ride bikes through the trailer park like we owned the world. But after high school, we went different ways. I got buried in bills. He got buried in scams. He always had a new hustle, flipping phones, selling knockoff sneakers, gambling on sports like it was a career. Last time I saw him, he asked me to co-sign for a loan. That was 4 years ago. Now here he was, texting me out of nowhere. I waited a full day before replying. When I finally did, he called me within seconds. "Yo, I heard you've been stacking. People say you're all disciplined now." I told him I was just trying to clean up. He chuckled. "Perfect. I got a business opportunity." That is when I should have hung up. Instead, I listened. He said he was putting together a vending machine side hustle. Already had a location lined up near a gym, just needed someone to go in with him. Said I could double my money in 6 months. All I had to do was front the cash to get started. It was only $1,000. Back then, that was more than half my emergency savings. I had been eating eggs and beans for months just to build that cushion. When I said I would pass, he got quiet. Then his voice shifted. "Man, after everything I did for you." He brought up the old days. Said I owed him for helping me that one summer when I crashed on his couch. Said blood was thicker than bank accounts. I could hear it in his tone. He was not really asking. He was expecting. I figured you of all people would get it. What's the point of being stable if you cannot help your own? That line stuck with me. Not because he was right, but because it echoed something I had been told my whole life. You have enough. Why not share? Why not risk it? Why not live? I told him I would think about it. Then I hung up, paced my room, and stared at my bank app for an hour. In the end, I said no. Again. And that is when the call started. Not just from Jay. From other family members. Aunts. Even my mom. All of them saying some version of the same thing. He is your cousin. It is just money. You act like you are better than us now. No one asked what it took to get here. No one cared how many nights I cried, scared I would lose everything. How many birthdays I skipped. How many invites I declined. They just saw a guy with a little savings and assumed I must have had it easy. But here is what they never saw. The nights I sat in silence, fighting the urge to order pizza because I was too depressed to cook. The months I walked to work in the snow to save gas. The times I watched people tip $20 at bars while I scraped coins for rice. They never saw me dig out. Just the surface, not the struggle. And that surface? It was about to crack, because Jay did not take rejection well. And he had one last move to play. The call came at work. I was stocking shelves on the night shift when my phone buzzed 3 times in a row. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to answer. A woman on the other end, real polite, said she was calling from my bank's fraud department. There's been some unusual activity on your account. We flagged a large transaction earlier this morning. My stomach dropped. I had not spent anything that day. 2 separate purchases, she continued. Both at electronic stores. One for $800, one for $550. Were those authorized? I felt the blood drain from my face. I told her no. Absolutely not. She paused. Sir, this card was swiped physically in store. Do you know where your card is? I checked my wallet. It was gone. I had used it the night before at a gas station. The same one Jay liked to hang out near. Everything clicked at once. The texts. The pressure. The guilt trip. Me saying no. And now this. I told the woman to freeze everything. Right away. She said they would investigate and issue a temporary refund while the case was reviewed. But it would take time. When I hung up, I just stood there, staring at the mop bucket like it could explain why the people closest to you always hit the hardest. I knew it was him. There was no proof. Not yet. But I knew. The timing was too perfect. And that gas station? The one that still printed full card numbers on receipts? I had left mine in the machine by accident. He did not even have to try hard. Just walk in and scoop it up. That night, I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel like it might fall apart in my hands. I had $73 left in my checking account. The savings were frozen. The credit cards were still locked from the repair plan I was on. Everything I had built, every little step forward, felt like it had been yanked from under me. And I kept hearing Jay's voice in my head. What's the point of being stable if you can't help your own? But this was not help. This was theft. This was betrayal, wrapped in a family name. I sat in the dark for a long time that night. No TV, no music, just me and the quiet, and the heavy truth sitting across from me like a ghost. Sometimes, the people you grow up with do not grow with you. They just grow bitter. And sometimes, when you stop being useful to them, they remind you, in the loudest way possible, that your peace makes them uncomfortable. And as I sat there, broke again, starting from scratch, I made a second promise, one that would change everything. That night, I made another promise. This one felt colder, sharper. The first promise I made came from shame. But the second one? It came from clarity. I promised I would never again apologize for protecting what I had earned. Not from strangers. Not from friends. Not even from family. Especially not from family. I got up the next morning and filed a police report. Told the bank I wanted to press charges if they found out who used the card. They asked if I had anyone in mind. I gave them Jay's full name, number, and last known address. No hesitation. 2 years earlier, I would have felt guilty doing that. Now, I felt free. I worked the double shift that week. Packed lunches, skipped caffeine, cut every corner possible to stay afloat while my money was frozen. It was like being right back at the bottom. But this time, I had muscle memory. I had been here before. I knew how to crawl. I knew how to keep moving. The weird thing? It got easier. Not because life was easier. It was still tight, still lonely, still quiet. But I was not bitter anymore. I was focused. I doubled down on everything. I automated my bills. I set up a second bank account just for savings, one I did not even carry a card for. I started reading books on money, on boundaries, on psychology. Not the shiny self-help ones. The gritty kind. The ones that talk about how people will love you as long as you are useful. I learned how to say no without explaining. No to dinners out. No to group trips. No to just spotting me this one time. I did not owe anyone a reason. And the craziest thing? Once I stopped explaining, they stopped asking. People just kind of drifted. The ones who stayed were the ones who respected my silence. And in that silence, I started building again. Only this time, I built differently. I set up a separate account for emergencies. Started buying groceries in bulk. Kept cash in an envelope for months I knew would hit harder. Took on side jobs, yard work, deliveries, even some late-night warehouse shifts. I wore the same boots until the soles peeled off. Sewed up my own jeans. Found pride in having less, because less meant control. And little by little, the number in my savings started growing again. 100, 300, 900. It was not fast. It was not flashy. But it was mine. And every time I looked at that balance, I thought, let them laugh. Let them live fast. Because one day, that speed would catch up with them. And when it did, I would be the one they called, not out of love, but out of need. Again, only this time, the answer would be different. It was about a year later when the messages started coming in again. Jay was the first. I had not heard from him since the bank reversed the charges and the fraud case quietly disappeared. Not enough proof to prosecute, they said. But I knew. He knew I knew. And we both moved on without saying it. Now he was back. Yo, his message said. You still doing okay? I might need a favor. That was all it took for the past to come rushing back. But I was not the same guy anymore. I did not respond. 3 days later, my aunt called. The same one who once told me I was lucky to have money because God gives to those who can handle it. This time, her tone was different. She asked if I could maybe help Jay with his rent because he had fallen on some hard times. Said it like I was just topping off a coffee cup. Like it was not the same man who stole from me and never once apologized. I told her I was not in a position to help right now. She paused, then said, well, you always were the stingy one. And just like that, the mask slipped again. That week, I heard from 3 other people, all of them asking for a little help. Apparently, the housing market had slapped a few of them around. One cousin defaulted on a car loan. My sister had racked up some serious debt from a home remodel. She posted all the before and after pics like she was on a reality show. Now she was quietly asking me to help cover her minimum payments. I said no to every one of them. Not because I hated them. Because I had learned that helping someone who refuses to change is not kindness. It is enabling. But here is what really burned. Word got around that I had money now. And suddenly, they started rewriting my entire story. He just got lucky. He probably had help from someone. He never took risks like the rest of us. It was like they could not accept that I had earned stability. So they decided I must have cheated to get it. Never mind the years I skipped birthdays, the nights I went to bed hungry, the months I walked to work in the snow. They did not see the choices, just the result. And that is when it hit me. Some people are so uncomfortable watching you get it right. They have to convince themselves you had it easy. Because if you didn't, then they would have to admit they wasted their chance. But there was still one person left who had not reached out. Until the day she showed up on my doorstep, broke, desperate, and still expecting me to say yes. It was late on a Sunday when I heard the knock. Not urgent, just steady, like whoever was behind it had all the time in the world. I opened the door and froze. It was Tasha. Again. Same eyes, same smirk, but this time it was dim. Her makeup looked like it had been applied hours ago and worn through. Her coat was the same cheap one from before, and her hands were shaking, just barely. Hey, she said, voice softer than I remembered. I did not know who else to call. I said nothing, just leaned against the doorframe. She looked around, as if expecting someone to come save her from the silence. Things got bad, she admitted. Real bad. Apparently, she had been couch hopping for months. Supplement guy was gone, moved across the country without warning. She had tried to get into a roommate situation, but nothing lasted. Her last job cut her hours, and the part-time gig she picked up under the table just dried up. I am not asking for a lot, she said. I just need a place to land. A few nights. Until I figure things out. The thing is, a year ago, that would have worked. But not now. Because what she was really asking for was a reset button. And I had finally learned that some people only come back when your peace starts to look like a pillow. I looked at her, not with anger, not even pity, just a clear head. I am not that guy anymore, I said. Her mouth twitched like she had not heard me right. You always said you would help me if I ever needed it. I also said I would never go back to the place that broke me, I replied. And you were part of that. Her jaw clenched. You really think you are better than me now? No, I said. I think I finally learned not to hand my lifeboat to the people who laughed when I was drowning. She stepped back, just a little. The wind picked up behind her, catching her coat. You're cold, she muttered. I nodded. Yeah, and warm now, too, because I kept my door closed. For a moment, neither of us said anything. She looked at me like she wanted to scream, or maybe cry, but she did neither. She just turned and walked away. No threats, no guilt trips, just silence. And when the door clicked shut behind me, I stood there for a while, listening to nothing. No collectors, no chaos, no old ghosts demanding entry, just peace. But even peace has its price, and I was about to find out what it cost to keep it when the final call came in from someone I never expected. It came on a Wednesday, an unknown number, but something about it made me pick up. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was instinct. Hello. There was a pause. Then a voice I had not heard in over a decade. Mike, it said. It was my father. I had not spoken to him since I was 19, since he told me, word for word, you're a burden. You don't know how to be a man. He was calling from a hospital. Said he had gotten my number from a cousin. Said he had been thinking a lot lately. Said he was proud of me. I just sat there, holding the phone like it might burn my ear. He started talking fast, trying to cover years of silence with a few careful words. Told me he heard I had turned things around. That people were saying I was the one everyone could count on now. And then came the reason for the call. He was behind on bills. The hospital stay had drained what was left of his savings. He was facing eviction, and he needed help, just until he could get back on his feet. I felt something rise in my throat. Not anger, not sadness, something colder. Because in that moment, I saw it all clearly. My whole life, people had told me I was lucky. Lucky to have a job. Lucky to have it together. Lucky to be the one without kids. Lucky not to need help. But what they really meant was, you're the safe one. The backup plan. The net below the tightrope they walked blindfolded. And now, the man who once told me I would never be enough? He was calling me, asking for mercy, asking for me to save him. There was a long pause. I did not yell. I did not cry. I just said, I hope you figure things out. He tried to speak again, but I ended the call. Not out of spite, out of survival. Because I had learned, finally, that not every person who helped break you deserves a seat at your table just because they are hungry now. And in that silence, after the call ended, I realized what I had really built all these years. Not wealth, not revenge, something much rarer. And I would have to explain it in the only way I knew how. People say I have it easy now, that I must have figured something out, that I am lucky to be stable. They do not see me as brave. They say I play it safe, that I never took risks, that I never lived. And sometimes I want to laugh. Other times, I want to scream. Because they never saw me skipping meals to pay off interest. They never saw me walking in the rain because gas was too expensive. They never saw me sitting alone on birthdays because I could not afford a gift to bring. They never saw me holding my breath when the card reader blinked or pretending I just forgot my wallet when the money ran out. They only see now the small apartment I own outright, the used car that runs because I pay to keep it that way, the quiet weekends, the stocked fridge, the peace. But they do not see what peace costs. Peace costs Friday nights you spend alone instead of chasing dopamine with people who would not remember your name if you lost everything. Peace costs swallowing pride, again and again, when people mock your discipline like it is fear. Peace costs saying no to people you once would have bled for, just because you finally learned they would never stop asking. And in this world, that kind of patience is rare. That kind of self-control is treated like cowardice. Because the world glorifies chaos. It celebrates maxed cards and luxury debt, and you only live once. It says freedom is being able to buy anything. But I learned the truth. Freedom is needing nothing. And responsibility? That is not fear. That is courage with its sleeves rolled up. The truth is, anyone can light their money on fire and call it living. But try building a fire slowly. Try saving scraps until they become warmth. Try walking past temptation 50 times in a row and still choosing the hard path. That is risk. That is power. And that is what they never saw. So now, when they say, "You always had it easy," I just smile. Because they will never understand what it takes to live like this. Quiet, steady, free.